Dating after abuse doesn't feel like stepping into something new. It feels like stepping into something your body doesn't fully trust. There's a strange tension between the version of you who knows she's healed enough to open up again, but the version of you whose nervous system still remembers every moment when connection did not mean safety. You're trying to date like a woman who's done the work, but half of your system still carries the reflexes of the woman who had to survive the relationship she left behind. That's why early dating feels heavier than it should. You're not reading the man in front of you, you're reading the ghosts behind you. I'm Megan Webster, an abuse recovery coach, a trauma-informed strategist, and the woman a narcissist hopes to never meet twice. This is the Narcissist Worst Nightmare podcast, where survival ends, shadow becomes power, and you rise into the woman impossible to manipulate, magnetize, or replace. Today, we are going straight into one of the patterns that destroys early dating for women who have done the deep healing, as showing up as a long-term partner in situations that have not earned that from you yet. When you step into dating after abuse, you carry instincts you did not choose. Instinct that shaped rooms you learned to stay safe by predicting everything that would happen. You walk into a first date with habits built in survival, not connection. You're paying attention to tone shifts because they once told you whether the night would stay calm or turn volatile. You're filtering your voice because your old relationship taught you that one wrong phase could flip the entire atmosphere. You keep the emotional temperature steady because friction used to come at a cost. You overconsider his comfort because confrontation was once dangerous. You keep everything subtle, smooth, digestible, not because that's who you are, but because being louder used to mean being punished. None of that was personality, it was protection. But now, without realizing it, you're applying those survival tactics to men that haven't earned an ounce of emotional energy from you. You are not trying to impress him, you're trying to prove to your nervous system that this time will not end the same way the last one did. Not because he's important, but because your body is still fighting a battle he knows nothing about. You are not too much, you were just trained to take up less space than what you deserved. You catch yourself stabilizing a dynamic before there even is one. You worry about being too much for someone who hasn't earned the right to see your fullness. You soften your edges because you're afraid of being misunderstood by somebody who doesn't even know you. And you prioritize harmony with someone who hasn't even shown you their baseline. This is not dating, that is your muscle memory. Early dating was never meant to be a place where you manage anything. It's the phase where you sit back and let someone show you who they are, when you're not carrying the weight of emotional connection. It's observation, not effort. It's discernment, not devotion. It's pacing, not merging. And when you remember that, you stop walking into the talking stage like someone who has something to prove. You walk in like someone who understands that your job is not to impress, your job is to be a witness. One of the hardest patterns to break after abuse is emotional over-responsibility. Your history makes you believe that honesty must be softened, boundaries must be padded, and directness must be wrapped in care to be acceptable. So after a couple of dates, you start treating the connection like it deserves an emotional dissertation. You adjust your tone, you soften the truth, you protect him from disappointment even though he's never protected you. You feel guilty for not wanting someone you barely know. You keep trying to exit with grace, but grace is not your problem. Over-responsibility is. You're not protecting him from pain. You're protecting yourself from the version of you who was punished for being honest. And the men you're worried about hurting couldn't carry you even if you stayed. That guilt isn't kindness, it's conditioning. You learn to walk on eggshells because the alternative was emotional chaos. You learn that your truth had consequences, that clarity created conflict. So now you carry this fear of impact into rooms that haven't even earned that version of you. Your new truth is simple. Ending a two-date connection does not require architecture. It doesn't require a rehearsed explanation, gentle cushioning, or emotional hand-holding. The right kind of man doesn't want an emotional performance. He wants you to be clear. I am not feeling the connection I need. Clean, regulated, honest. Boundaries are not cold when they're spoken from a grounded place. Directness is not harsh when it's rooted in truth. And the men who can meet you, the ones emotionally equipped for a woman like you, won't punish you for choosing yourself. The moment you stop cushioning your exit, you stop dating like the hurt version of you and start dating like the healed one. This is where women who have done the healing start to betray themselves without even realizing it. You enter early dating thinking you're being open and available, when what you're actually doing is offering emotional intimacy before the foundation exists. Instead of observing whether a man has the capacity to meet you, you slip into nurturing mode. Instead of letting the connection unfold, you start tending to it like a relationship instead of giving it space for compatibility to prove itself, you fill the space with empathy, understanding, and effort that he has not earned. You catch yourself adjusting your schedule, offering emotional support, matching vulnerability way too fast, interpreting inconsistency with generosity instead of discernment, and holding space for someone who hasn't built anything with you. Your empathy is so powerful, but misused empathy is self-betrayal. You are not wrong for caring. You're wrong for caring before you know who's standing in front of you. Your nurturing didn't ruin the dynamic. His lack of capacity did. You just got there too early to notice. Not because you're trying to be loved, but because your nervous system associates emotional investment with control. If you give enough, anticipate enough, show up enough, maybe you will keep yourself safe from disappointment. But dating isn't meant to be stabilized, it's meant to be evaluated. Your emotional depth is not supposed to be the entry point, it's supposed to be the reward. Your presence isn't supposed to be the audition, it's supposed to be the standard. And your heart isn't supposed to be the offering, it's supposed to be the filter. When you hold that, early dating becomes peaceful because you're not trying to earn anything. You're not trying to maintain anything. You are simply watching, and what you see changes everything. There's a moment, and every woman knows it, where you feel yourself accelerating. You want clarity, definition, direction. Not because this man has done anything profound, but because your system is trying to get ahead of the unknown. You label it excitement, but underneath the surface is something older. The need to avoid insecurity, the need to anchor, the need to escape ambiguity, because ambiguity feels like instability and instability feels like danger. So that pull towards certainty is not your intuition, it's your trauma replaying itself. The urgency you feel is not romance, it's your body trying to outrun the part of you that once begged to be chosen. You are not bonding, you are bracing. You're not falling, you are forecasting. You are not feeling fate, you're feeling fear. Your body remembers the emotional unpredictability. It remembers how quickly things used to shift. The punishment that followed speaking your needs, the betrayal that came out of nowhere, the moments where connection turned into confusion without any warning. So now, sitting across from someone new, your inner system reacts first. You bond early not because he's your match, but because more time with uncertainty feels like more time vulnerable to pain. You start fitting him into a future to calm your nervous system, not because he belongs there. Because early dating isn't meant to soothe your fear, it's meant to reveal his truth. Urgency is not a sign from your intuition. It's a sign you are learning to trust the pace of a healthy connection. A pace that won't chase you, love bomb you, or destabilize you. A pace your old self did not get to experience. But when you slow down, you finally notice the difference between something that's familiar and something that's in alignment. Women who survived emotional chaos often struggle with the endings. Not because they want to stay, but because they were trained to avoid the emotional fallout at all costs. You feel compelled to exit with care that doesn't match the connection. You start over-explaining decisions in ways that make it easier for him to receive. You wrap your truth in softness. You rehearse 100 versions of, I hope this doesn't hurt him. You do not need a dissertation to walk away. You don't need a gentle narrative to justify choosing yourself. The only reason endings feel heavy is because you were trained to carry the emotional fallout of men who never carried yours. Walking away is not unkind, but dragging yourself through a performance to soften the blow is. But that impulse does not come from compassion, it comes from a past where telling the truth was not safe. In early dating, you are not responsible for landing your boundaries gently. You're responsible for honoring your integrity, speaking clearly, and letting your truth exist without apology. A respectful sentence is enough. A concise message is enough. Your decision alone is enough. The moment that you stop overfunctioning during endings, your nervous system stops dragging old wounds into new connections. You finally behave like a woman who doesn't fear conflict because your peace no longer depends on somebody else's reaction. Women who have lived through emotional abuse often swing between extremes. Either they hold no boundaries at all, or their boundaries come out so sharp, rigid, and defensive. But when you step into your dark feminine identity, everything softens without losing power. Your boundaries stop sounding like threats and start sounding like truth. You do not need to repeat yourself. You do not need to defend your choices. You do not need to present your needs with a smile. Your clearness becomes its own language. A man does not need your standards. Your clearness is not aggression. Your boundaries are not attitude. Your directness is not cruelty. This is emotional leadership. and emotionally grounded men understand and rise to meet it. The rest will fall away because they were never meant to lead beside you anyways. You can now say, I am not available for that without apologizing. This doesn't work for me without offering a backstory. You can say no without an explanation that makes it easier for him to receive it. And you can walk away from connections that do not meet your standard without trying to convince yourself it might grow into something that it's not. A regulated woman doesn't draw boundaries to protect herself from others, she draws them to protect her peace. And because her boundaries are grounded, not reactive, only emotional mature men approach and the rest remove themselves immediately. This is the moment where dating stops feeling like a gamble and starts feeling like a powerful choice. The black cat woman does not chase her peace, she creates it by refusing to abandon herself. Her power isn't in her edges, it's in her restraint. She doesn't fear losing a man, she fears losing the woman she's become. And that's the part that makes her impossible to replace. Dating becomes peaceful not because men change, but because she refuses to abandon herself again. She's dating from a seat of power, not the residue of her past. One of my clients came to me in a panic over ending a connection she didn't even want. The man was pleasant, polite, and fundamentally mismatched, but her guilt spiraled, not because she felt anything for him, but because ending things felt like a test she didn't want to fail. She was drafting paragraph after paragraph explaining her thought process. Each version she tried to write was softer than the last. She kept trying to find a language that made her decision less uncomfortable for him, a man she barely knew. When I asked her why the exit of this felt so heavy for her, she started to cry before she could even answer. And in that moment, her real truth surfaced. She was not trying to protect him. She was trying to protect the version of herself who once paid the price for honesty with punishment. She actually wasn't afraid of hurting him. She was afraid of being the girl who caused chaos simply by telling the truth. She didn't really need help letting him down. She needed to give herself permission to stop carrying men like emotional projects. Her healing wasn't the goodbye. It was realizing she didn't have to apologize for choosing herself. She sent a one-line text and he responded with no worries, take care, and that was it. She finally got to experience what it felt like for speaking her truth without predicting disaster. And that moment rewired her idea of what she owed others, of what she owed men, and most importantly, what she owed herself. It's such a simple moment that happened where she got to choose herself cleanly, calmly, and confidently. And this is where we like to talk about the black cat era. The response is not loud, it's not vengeful, it's not guarded, it's very sovereign. So you're not dating to prove your worth anymore, you're actually dating to protect it. Early connection isn't a commitment, it's a filter. And the second you stop auditioning, the whole dynamic shifts. You're no longer hoping he rises, you're watching whether he can. You're not bending to be chosen, you are choosing from your power. And this version of you doesn't get abandoned to keep a connection alive. The woman who gets to walk away and own her truth, seeing clearly, staying grounded, choosing herself every single time. If this episode cracks something open in you good, that means you are not just listening, you are evolving. Share this with another woman who needs it. Hit follow so you don't miss the next one. Send me a DM on Instagram and tell me what landed for you. And for the deeper work, please join us inside of the Black Cat Academy, where this level of power becomes your default. A 6-month program dedicated to you understanding your shadow, weaponizing your discernment, setting standards that will only allow sacred love in, and become the woman a narcissist can never touch and a good man can't lose. This is the Narcissist's Worst Nightmare podcast, and remember, the only person you owe anything to is you.